Welcome to 15 Minutes with a Captain. I am Captain Zakar, and to my left.
I am Officer Phillip.
And we're going to go over the voice of God. That's going to be today's topic here real quick, all right? Let's go to Job chapter 33, and let's start out at verse 14. Let's read that.
This is the book of Job, chapter 33 and verse 14. For God speaketh once, yea, twice, yet man perceiveth it not.
So the reason why we wanted to start out here, because we're dealing with the voice of God. Christianity just believes that God speaks to them as often as they supposedly call upon him for whatever it may be, not understanding the scriptures. But God is, what the word would say in the scriptures is omnipotent, omnipotent, right? He's so supreme and so magnificent in power and glory that he spoke through the mouth of Job and said he only speak twice. Once, maybe twice, that he'll talk to you in your lifetime. The same way he did with Solomon, right? That's how powerful his words are, that he has to limit them of how often he speaks, because whatever he says, it shall be done. So and when Job says he speak once, maybe twice to a man in his life. Give me that in John chapter 12, and let's read verse 28 through 30.
This is the book of John, chapter 12 and verse 28. Father, glorify thy name. Then came there a voice from heaven saying.
There came a voice from heaven. Go ahead.
Saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again.
Read on.
The people, therefore, that stood by and heard it, said that it thundered. Others said, an angel spake to him. Jesus answered and said, this voice came not because of me, but for your sakes.
That thunder that the people heard was actually the voice of God. God's voice is so powerful that us in our carnal flesh, we can't even understand it when he actually speaks to us. He has to put it in what? Similitudes, comparing one thing to another, speak to you in visions, in a dream. But when he actually speaks his words, they come out of his mouth, they so powerful it sounds like thunder that only the divine, like Jesus the Christ, can understand his voice when he speaks. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 1, and let's read verse 23.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 1 and verse 23. Turn ye at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you.
He's going to pour out his spirit unto you. And when he pours out his spirit unto you, what is that going to cause us to do? Read.
I will make known my words unto you.
So God is letting you know the only way to hear his voice, to understand the words that he speaks to you, is when you turn from your sins. So in order to hear the voice of God, you have to receive his correction. You have to turn away from what you think is right and turn to what God says is right. That's the only way he will make his words through his voice known unto you. Let's stay there and let's read on verse 24 on down.
Verse 24. Because I have called and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded.
Read.
But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof.
That's why many people will never hear the voice of God when he calls once, maybe twice. Why? Because we as a people, we despise the words of God. We despise his reproof. We despise his ways that make us change. We don't even want to hear the word of God. We'll turn our back on it. That's why many people won't even hear when he calls you once, maybe twice. Let's read on verse 26.
Verse 26. I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh.
Read on.
When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind. When distress and anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer.
I will not answer. Read on.
They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For that they had hated knowledge.
They hated the knowledge of God. Read on.
And did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel.
They would have none of my counsel.
they despised all my reproof.
Uh-huh.
Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices.
Uh-huh.
For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them.
So it says that the turning away of the simple shall slay them. What was they turning away from when God was trying to make his voice and his words known unto them? Give me that in Proverbs chapter 28, and let's read verse 9. What was they turning away from? And we're going back to Proverbs 1 in a second. Go ahead.
Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 9.
Uh-huh.
He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be an abomination.
They were turning away from the law of God. That's what they was turning away from. They was turning away. Whenever the law came out, thou shalt not, they did not want to hear it. That's actually God calling out to you when you hear the laws of God. Unlike Christianity, when you hear the laws of God coming out, that's actually God calling out to you. That's actually God speaking to you once, maybe twice in your lifetime. Go back to Proverbs chapter 1. Let's read 32 and 33 again.
This is the book of Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 32. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them.
Shall destroy them. So when you turn away from hearing the words of God, he also turns away from you. He prepares you for the slaughter. Read on.
But whoso hearkeneth unto me,
if you listen, go ahead,
shall dwell safely.
You will dwell safely if you listen to the voice of God. Let's go to that in Psalms 103, and let's read verse 20 to show when God speaks with his voice, what is he telling us? Let's read that.
This is the book of Psalms chapter 103 and verse 20.
Uh-huh.
Bless the Lord, yea, ye his angels that excel in strength.
Ye his angels that are talking about the divine angels that excel in strength. Go ahead.
That do his commandments.
That do what?
That do his commandments.
They do his commandments. Read.
Hearkening unto the voice of his word.
The what?
The voice of his word.
When God speaks to us, he is telling us to keep his commandments. When the voice of God speaks, it is thou shalt not. When his voice speaks, it is thou shalt do. That is the voice of God. Let's get more on that. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 30, and let's read verse 10.
This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 10.
Yep.
If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
If you listen to the voice of the Lord thy God, what are you going to do?
To keep his commandments.
The voice of God tells you to keep the commandments of God. If you say that you have spoken of God and God has spoken to you, if the voice never told you to keep the commandments of God, that wasn't him speaking to you. That was Satan. That was Satan talking to you, because when the voice of God talks to you, read that again.
Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 10.
Yep.
If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments.
Keep his commandments. Go ahead.
And his statutes, which were written in the book of the law. And if thou turn unto the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul.
Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 7, and let's read 21 through 23. Because it said in Deuteronomy, it says, obey his voice. Immediately after, it says, keep his commandments. That's what the voice of God is. But we're going to get more on it. Jeremiah 7, let's read 21 through 23.
This is the book of Jeremiah chapter 7 and verse 21.
Yep.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, put your burnt offerings unto your sacrifices and eat flesh.
Uh-huh.
For I spake not unto you, unto your fathers, nor commanded them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt, concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices.
What is he saying? When I spoke, when I introduced myself on Mount Sinai to your forefathers, I wasn't talking about sacrifice. I gave you commandments to keep. When he first met us on Mount Sinai, when the trumpet sounded loud, right? Read verse 23. It's going to say it.
Verse 23. But this thing commanded I them, saying,
obey
my voice.
Obey my voice. Read.
And I will be your God. And ye shall be my people.
And what does it mean to obey the voice of God?
And walk ye in all the ways that I have commanded you.
To keep his commandments. Read on.
That it may be well unto you.
Because when you obey the voice of God and keep the commandments, It is a life full of peace and non worry about what's going on outside your door, what's going on from the next day. Why? Because you obey the commandments of God, and those that obey the commandments of God, God looks after them. God takes care of them. God makes sure they never go hungry when you obey the voice of God. Let's get that in Malachi chapter 3, and let's read verse 6.
This is the book of Malachi chapter 3 and verse 6.
Because I know what you're thinking now. Oh, no, the commandments are done away. It's faith, it's faith, it's faith, it's grace, it's grace, it's grace. Let's read what God says. Read that.
For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed.
What does that mean? Your pastors cannot change what God demands of us. No matter how much they spend the feel-good theology of European Christianity and make you feel all warm and bubbly inside and sing hymns to you with the sodomite choir director, God says, I change not. So from the beginning, when he spoke to us, it was always obey my commandments. Let's get that in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 17. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
He came to fulfill what? That which was written of him in the law of Moses, in the Psalms, and what else was that? In the law of Psalms, the law of, the Psalms, the book of the prophets, and of Moses, the book of the law, what was written of him. Now read verse 18.
Verse 18. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled.
So as long as you can look up into the heavens and you are standing on ground every single day of your life, Christ said, I did not come to give you liberty to not obey the voice of God, to keep the commandments of God. That will always stand. He did not change that. John chapter 15, and let's read verse 10.
This is the book of John chapter 15 and verse 10. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love.
So Christ obeyed what? The voice of God by keeping the commandments. And if you call yourself a follower of Christ, that means you have to obey the voice of God and keep the commandments. Give me that in Acts chapter 24 and verse 14.
This is the book of Acts chapter 24 and verse 14. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which shall call heresy,
which they call heresy,
so worship I the God of my father, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets.
Now you can't use Paul no more. Paul just said, I even obey and believe everything that comes from the voice of God, which is written in the law and the prophets. You can't use Paul no more because he believed in obeying the voice of God, which is to keep the commandments. How much more should we now do that in today's time? Let's go to Romans chapter 3, and let's read verse 31.
This is the book of Romans chapter 3 and verse 31. Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law.
Paul kept the laws of God. He obeyed the voice of God. Go to Romans 2, and let's read verse 13.
This is the book of Romans chapter 2 and verse 13. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified.
So why would Paul have to remind the people that not the hearers of the law are justified, but actually the doers? Because Paul understood God does not change. So from the beginning, the middle, and the end, you would always have to obey the voice of God. That is what would justify you when you stand before him on Judgment Day. Not how much you fed the poor, not how much you gave a bum $1, not how much faith you think you had. It's you obeying the voice of God and keeping his commandments, which he told you to do way back in the beginning. Those are the people that will be justified. And also the people that do what? I don't have it down, but let's get it. Revelation 14, and let's read verse 12. Let's read that.
This is the book of Revelation, chapter 14 and verse 12.
Yep.
Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God,
that obey the voice of God,
and the faith of Jesus.
That's what it takes to get into the kingdom. Paul believed that. Christ said he didn't come to change that. He said that those that obey the voice of God and you keep the faith in Christ, those are the ones that will be justified on Judgment Day. Give me that in Revelation chapter 22, and let's read verse 14 and 15.
This is the book of Revelation, chapter 22 and verse 14. Blessed are they that do his commandments.
Here's the proof of the justifying. Go ahead.
That they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city.
The commandments of God is what justifies you to enter in through the gates into New Jerusalem, into the kingdom of heaven. The obeying of God's voice is what justifies you before him. Give me that in Matthew chapter 7, and let's read verse 15.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 15.
Yep.
Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves.
So anybody that is telling you not to keep the commandments of God and obey his voice, they are leading you to the wide path that leadeth to destruction. So anytime someone says that we don't have to keep the commandments, it's all about faith, you better run, because they are telling you to deliberately disobey the voice of God.
Shalom, Israel. This is Bishop Nathaniel. I want you to know that you can view all our Sabbath classes live on IUIC TV. That's right, I said on IUIC TV. Download the app today. Shalom.
We used to scream Black Power while Heron was pushed. But at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. IUIC has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission, minor murmuring, omitting, and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road, purple and gold, from Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. IUIC, we deliver the truth.